Hello friends, Clage back today with another Punishing Gray Raven video, and I want to talk today something a little different. We are now 3 months into the global synchronization program, and we are on the wind down portion of our second global sync patch in the Soaring Beyond. Only a couple weeks left until we get our newest patch, which is going to be not only a triple patch, but it's going to feature 2 paid S ranks for the first time in the history of the game. So now that we've had some time to kind of experience this program and get a feel for how it works and what we can expect out of these patches, I want to do a little retrospective and discuss what I think the pros and cons so far have been for the Global Sync program, and what I think the outlook is for Punishing Gray Raven when this is all said and done, when we finally have every server caught up and all at the same pace as the Chinese servers. So these are just going to be my personal thoughts on how this is going so far. Your mileage may vary, your outlook and experience with the Global Sync may vary, but this is kind of how I feel we're doing and how things are going now that we're decently into this whole plan. So I'm going to start with the cons first, because I think it's a lot better and a lot more productive to start with things that are either negative or could be improved, and then talk about the things that are going well. I think it makes more sense to build from negative into positive than vice versa. So let's just talk about what I think have been kind of the somewhat more negative or more difficult aspects of the Global Sync program. And first and foremost, my biggest, probably most notable con out the gate is just the crunch. This applies to everybody, but especially to content creators. There is so much more to cover in a short period of time. We have characters coming out so much quicker now. Since the beginning of the year, we have gotten Han Ying, we have gotten Wansha, we have gotten multiple A ranks, we've gotten Luna introducing the Nihil element. We have had a lot of characters, and that's just characters, not even talking anything else. That is a lot to cover and get out in a decent amount of time, especially if you're a content creator, because especially with new characters, you want to have stuff out as soon as possible, but you also want to make sure that you're divulging proper information, teaching people how to build and play the characters properly. And there's a real crunch to that. That has been a very notable thing. So, and in addition to that, if you're a content creator, you also still have to, play the game, do your dailies, do your weeklies, participate in the events, because content creators like our black cards and rewards too, so we've got to keep up with all of that, as first and foremost. But I think even more so, and this applies to everyone much more than just content creators, is the crunch of the story itself. So I've been playing PGR now for a little over 2.5 years at this point, and I've slowly been making my way through the story. I just finished up Polaris Bond, which was Choose Chapter, last weekend. And I really love the story of this game. I love the world building. I love the characters. But the thing about the PGR story is the further you get into it, the more dense and more high concept the chapters become. So many things are introduced, so many philosophies are introduced to this. So this isn't a story that I just sit down and boot up and start going through willy-nilly. Like, I want to only do the main story when I know I can devote my full attention to it, that I can really pay attention, that I can really kind of let the information, the plot, the characters, the twists all really sink in so I can enjoy it properly. And obviously now we're getting story chapters just one after the other, stacked on top of each other. That's a very real daunting aspect of these things. We have come a long ways from those first 8 chapters that you can basically blaze through in, 10-15 minutes if you just skim the dialogue and text. And now we're getting chapters that are rivaling things like Arknights in terms of length and complexity and what's going on. So the fear of spoilers is always a thing when you play a gacha game. A lot of people play these games for the stories, myself included, and trying to avoid those spoilers can get a bit rough when you're getting more chapters every single patch over and over again. So that's felt like a bit of a crunch. We also have the aspect of things like the alternative interpretations, derived from Matrix, curse waves, and all this stuff. If you're a newer player, especially, and you are a long ways from catching all these rewards up, that's a thing that's a big part of the crunch. But even more so is, like I talked about during the derived from Matrix video I did last week, almost all of these modes have ended up giving us characters and events and other things that do eventually become part of the main campaign. They become key cogs in the main story at various points. So there's pressure to get caught up on these as well, because you don't know if you're going to miss some context, or if a character reveal during the campaign is going to hit less hard because you aren't caught up on the alternative interpretations. And we get another one of these with the next patch, so this problem is not exactly going to get better anytime soon. But it just kind of highlights the density of what we're being given now. And don't get me wrong, more content is almost always better than not getting enough content. I think almost everyone will tell you they would much rather have too much to do than run out of stuff to do and sit and stare at the game menu and go, well, now what? So this isn't a complete negative. This isn't a complete bad thing, but it is a very real thing. That crunch is incredibly real, and I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling that, whether you're a content creator or not. But definitely a notable, somewhat downside to the Global Sync program is just you got a lot to take care of all at once, and that applies to dailies, having more event modes being thrown at you, and all that good stuff. So I think that is definitely one of the more difficult parts of the Global Sync program. The second one that I think is a pretty notable con, and it's probably the con that was talked about the most when this program was announced, is that if you're a spender, the pressure from the Global Sync program is real. It's very, very, very real. It used to be kind of rough when we would have the rare occasion where we would have back-to-back patches with a paid S rank and then another paid S rank. That rarely happened. Very, very rarely happened. But when it did, you kind of felt that squeeze, right? If you're a spender and you're intending to take characters beyond a single copy, maybe you're looking for, a double S3 or even triple S or beyond, doing that on back-to-back patches could get a little daunting. You've got multiple copies of character you're trying to roll, probably rolling for their signature weapon, probably picking up their cub, and then building them and getting them hyper-tuned, all that good stuff. So that pressure as a spender is very daunting these days. Knowing the next patch is going to have 2 paid S ranks, that is a lot. If you are a spender and you try to get characters beyond just a single copy and not trying to get any of their accessories out the gate, you know what I mean? And this compounds the more of a whale you are. If you're the kind of player who's been taking new characters to Triple S Plus every single time, being told to do that 2 or 3 times over the course of a couple months that's a lot. That is a lot to ask of your spender player base, because even though we're getting more characters in rapid succession and we're getting more things to play with, most of us can't magically double or triple our disposable income that we set aside to use on PGR or whatever gacha game you might play. That pressure is very real, and if you're not a spender, then you're not going to feel this very much, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I'll actually talk about that more when we get to the positives of the Global Sync patch. But in addition to just the, hey, go get, more characters and do more rolls and spend more of your cards consistently, we also are getting shorter lifespans for some of these new characters. So, we just got Hong Ying and Wansha, and now we know for a fact that these characters released during the Global Sync are going to have a shorter lifespan of being the meta character in their team and their role, just because we're blasting through content so much quicker. We are going to go through a full years of content probably in 6 to 7 months total if they keep doing things at the rate they're doing with the Global Sync program. And that basically means we're losing upwards of half a year of the amount of time that these meta characters will eventually see their replacement released into the game, and thus no longer, be the main core of that particular role or their particular team. And that does make your value as a spender feel diminished somewhat. It's kind of one of the things I really like about PGR is that PGR is very upfront with how it does characters, especially the S ranks. A ranks can vary a little bit more. They get to be more experimental because those are free. But with the S ranks, with the new characters that are designed to take a spot in a meta team and really carry a team through your content, it can be kind of rough knowing that you're going to get less time with that. You're spending this money to get a character built up and take them to whatever rank you want, get all their weapons and cubs and stuff. And knowing you're losing basically half a year of that time where they are guaranteed to be helping you carry a specific team or specific content does make the value feel a little bit less, full. You definitely feel like you're spending more and getting a little less. And if that's not a microcosm for just the economic climate of the world right now, I don't know what is, but it's PGR specifically, you definitely feel that. And in addition to this, because the spender aspect was probably the most controversial aspect of the Global Sync program, there are definitely people who are either spending less or have just stopped spending money on the game completely. And that, no matter how you look at it, if you're a free-to-play player or a spender or anywhere in between, that is a net negative for the game because spenders are who help fund this game and help get us new characters, new content, new story. We don't want spenders to not want to spend money on the game anymore because that's a direct hit to the revenue of the game. Obviously, that's how gacha games work. We've kind of all experienced this for a while. We know the game plan. And what I do like about PGR is they don't sugarcoat how they do things. If a character comes out that's an S rank, that is a role that is already occupied by a different S rank, they are usurping that character in their spot. They are going to be a direct upgrade, probably a massive direct upgrade, because newer characters just innately are always going to do more damage, have more powerful kits than the characters that come before them. That has been PGR's MO from the get-go, more or less. And I don't think that's a bad way to do it when you're very clear and very upfront about how you're going to do that. Some people really dislike power creep, and PGR system is power creep in the most literal definition of the term, but it's power creep that doesn't make you feel bad nearly as much because for the most part, when a character comes out, if they are the meta character for their role, you've probably got a minimum of a year and a half to 2 years where that character is going to be the character. They are going to carry that part of the load for you, and they're going to succeed. And they're going to be, once you've built them, they're built. You don't have to mess with it anymore. You're set and good to go. You can focus on building side characters or A ranks or prepare for building your next X rank, which is nice. I think that is a perfectly fine way to do it, and I've been okay with that. But with the Global Sync accelerating everything, it does mean that those characters will last a little bit less time in real world time. We'll still get the same amount of patches, but not the same amount of months and or years that character is meta. So those are probably, the biggest drawbacks to this whole program, and there's no really getting around it. That's just what has to be done for this program to work in the first place. But on the plus side, those are really the only negatives I have about the Global Sync program so far. I don't really have anything else I think that's bad or that is causing a lot of issues for the player base or the content creators or spenders or whatnot. Everything else I think about the Global Sync program is a notable net positive. So let's talk about pros, more better things that this program is doing and where it's taking us. So first major pro, and this is to piggyback off what I was just talking about, being a spender has not been nearly as bad as I personally expected it to be in the Global Sync program. We do have to roll more frequently. We do have to build characters faster. We do have to buy rainbow cards more regularly if you want to continue taking characters to whatever your desired level is. Me personally, I set aside an amount of my disposable income for this game to take every new S rank to triple S with their weapon and their cup. That's just where I like to have the characters. It's how much I'm willing to invest back into PGR, and I'm more than happy to support this game monetarily. I love this game. This game's really important to me for a lot of reasons. I'll probably do some videos on that down the road, but I have no problem spending money on PGR and giving Kuro my money. I'm very happy to do that. But I was definitely nervous, sweating a little bit when this program got announced, because it's one thing to set aside disposable income to build up an S rank like that when one comes out every, 2.5, 3 months apart. There's a pretty notable gap normally, other than the rare times we got back-to-back S ranks. You would have some time to build back up your roll currency and your tickets and all that good stuff. So the initial outlook on this was definitely nerve-wracking, but the big thing that's kind of helped balance this out is that now, because we're getting 2 and 3 patches at a time, it also means we're getting 2 and 3 times the high-value stuff. The Battle Pass is a perfect example. Getting to be able to buy 2 of the Battle Passes is such good return for the amount of rainbow cards you have to actually spend to get it, that it means there's not near as much pressure to go in and start buying the bigger packs, the more expensive rainbow card packs, right? Like, this kind of stuff comes around every single patch. We have the initial run of things that will offer you various packs, these rainbow card packs that'll have some level of, obviously, roll currency, but then usually come with other things. Sometimes it's serum, sometimes it's memory picks, stuff like that. But they're a little bit of everything, right? But the nice thing is that now we're getting multiple copies of these very low-cost but very high-value packs. And being able to buy multiple of those at a time has really kind of helped bridge the gap as a spender to keep up with what I wanted to spend on this game, but not feel like I'm having to spend twice or thrice the amount I would normally spend on a patch before the global sync. If you are not a spender, if you're not, putting money in this game, you're completely free to play, or maybe you just buy the Battle Pass, or maybe you just buy the daily login subscription, then you're not really noticing a huge change here, and that's not a bad thing either, because frankly, you don't have to worry about it. One less thing to worry about is one less thing taking away your attention from, just enjoying the game, which is always good. So we have the much more high density of high value packs going, and we've gotten stuff like this where you're getting bonuses for spending X number of rainbow cards per patch. And these certainly do not make up for having double or triple patches being dropped on us all at once, but it doesn't hurt. It is helping bridge the gap a little bit more. And this has been a nice kind of sort of middle ground that at least lets spenders feel like that we weren't completely forgotten, that Kuro knows we helped fund the game. And they wanted to make sure we don't feel completely left out in the cold with how much is being dropped in our laps all at once, while also simultaneously not angering the Chinese player base who've already spent their money and already got their packs and rolled these characters and stuff. If they would have given us major discounts on paid packs to try and alleviate the pressure of dropping 2 and 3 patches in our lap at once, there would have been extreme backlash, massive backlash from the Chinese player base. And frankly, rightfully so, because they would look at it and go, okay, so because this other region is behind, they're getting to buy things at a discount when we were never offered that. That just, even if you want to argue what would or would not be fair to each player base, there is no arguing that that would be a bad look PR-wise for Kuro, and it would make a whole lot of longtime players in China, which is the key core base for PGR. The Chinese player base is far and away the largest player base for this game, and also far and away the largest spender base in this game. So offering discounts to everyone else just because of the Global Sync program was not going to be a good PR move for Kuro. No matter how much that might not make us happy with how quickly we're having to spend money, it just wasn't going to work. So I think they found the closest thing to an elegant solution they could, with being able to offer us more of the high value but low cost packs, multiple copies of the battle pass, multiple copies of the daily login. It has been so much less daunting than I thought it was going to be. It's still a lot, don't get me wrong. I'm still having to spend more than I would have if we were getting an S rank every other patch, but it's not nearly what I expected, where it's like, well, I have to spend 3 times the amount in, a quarter of the time sort of situation. It definitely has not hit that point. This next patch is probably going to be the biggest kick we've gotten. Again, 2 paid S ranks over the course of 6 weeks is kind of mind-blowingly scary when you consider how much that is. But again, I think they've done a nice job balancing it out. And from my perspective as a spender, not nearly as bad as it could have been. Pro number 2 has been the massive influx of new players to Punishing Gray Raven. PGR has always been on the more niche side of the gacha spectrum, and I can safely say that since I started playing this game and started talking to other people about this game, paying attention to the community and all that good stuff, watching content creators make things, I cannot come close to even thinking of a moment where we had this many new people checking out PGR or coming back after having dropped PGR and picking it back up. The global sync has definitely boosted the influx of new players, new commandants to the game, and I think that's awesome. That is by itself a way you could argue that the global sync program has not only been the correct thing to do, but that it's been a success. The fact that it is bringing in so many new players and so many new faces and getting more people's eyes on the game is a massive W for PGR writ large. The fact that my YouTube channel, which has been a very on and off channel, I in the past have basically made content when I feel like making content, and when I grow tired of it or feel burned out or just don't really feel the motivation to make it, I stop using my YouTube channel. That's mostly been for fighting games, for Guilty Gear. But since I started doing PGR content, which has not been very long, mind you, that's basically been late last year, so 3-ish months, a little over 3 months, my channel has gained over 1,000 subscribers. I did not expect to see that at all. My YouTube channel is known entirely for my Guilty Gear content and my speedruns. And I feel kind of safe in saying that Guilty Gear, especially since Strive released, is a much more well-known IP and with a much broader reach than PGR, and speedrunning has, exploded in the last 15 years and is a very popular thing. So to see this channel gain 1,000 subscribers just from PGR content is frankly wild. And I don't think that is an accident that it coincides with so many new players checking out the game, trying out, the combat, and finally getting into this game instead of just, oh, I heard that really cool song in a random YouTube video, or someone's demonstration of Crimson Weave soloing a boss showed up on my timeline. Like, you're actually getting lots of new people trying out, downloading the game, playing it, and possibly even spending money on it. That's great. Like, you cannot ask for anything more than enacting a giant game plan for your massive gacha game and having new players want to join in because of it. So that is a massive W, big win in terms of the global sync and what it's doing. Third major pro is, while we are getting characters much faster, we're getting a lot more content dropped on our lap much faster, the other thing we're getting much faster is quality of life. I've played a lot of gacha games, and I have never seen a game add quality of life updates as consistently and as well thought out as PGR does. Every single patch, there is something that makes playing the game more enjoyable and more convenient. There's still the crunch of having so much being thrown at us once in a single patch. Obviously, more event modes, more things to do and try and get rewards out of is all there. But at the same time, we're getting quality of life so much quicker that it doesn't feel bad. It really doesn't feel overwhelming at all because we're getting so many new things. Just this patch alone, we got all the new quality of life for the dorm. You go in for your commissions, you click the dispatch all, you click the claim all, done. You click the complete all the head pats. Like, the game just consistently reminds you that it does respect your time and it respects the ability to give you more convenient ways to play the game. And the amount of quality of life we're getting, you know, in rapid succession is just awesome. It's great. As a longtime player, getting, you know, reminded every single patch that the team wants you to be able to log in, feel like you accomplished something, and log out without spending multiple hours playing Punishing Gray Raven is a huge plus. And even more importantly is that it's making the onboarding for all these new players a much smoother process. They are getting a much more streamlined, much more easy to digest version of PGR as a whole. Maybe not easier to digest in the fact that they're getting so much more content thrown at them all at once, but in terms of the day-to-day playing PGR, doing your dailies and doing the things the game wants you to do to earn rewards, it is so much smoother than it used to be by just orders of magnitude. I started playing this game before it even had an official PC client. And, like, if you looked at PGR in year 1 or 2 and then just looked at the game in terms of, like, going through the daily tasks, you would be convinced it literally is a different title. It's absurd how much they consistently update the UI, update their animations, make things easier and more simplified to do in terms of the stuff that's just a day-to-day grind, while not diluting the actual gameplay, the actual story, the actual things that matter when you really sink your time into the game. Getting quality of life like this in rapid succession just out and out rules. It's great. This has been awesome, and that part is maybe the most welcome part of the Global Sync program. Just getting all the quality of life stuff this much quicker. Great. Absolutely love that aspect of it. Next major pro of this whole sync program for me personally, the hype of being able to get and play with new characters without sitting around for a year plus and just waiting for them to actually be available to you. This is really obvious, but getting to roll and play the new characters quicker is just, it feels good, man. It just feels good. As someone who started playing gacha games with Fate Go, there is nothing quite as big of a buzzkill as seeing a new unit get announced that you're like, oh man, I want that character. I want to build teams around that character. And knowing that you have to sit for 2 whole years before you even get the chance to attempt to roll on them. So having the wait be much, much shorter to try out these new characters, to get these new units onto our teams, to be able to play with them every day in the various game modes is awesome. It builds the hype for new character announcements much quicker. It makes you feel more excited knowing you don't have to sit here for an entire year to get to check out character X, Y, and Z. So that has been a major bonus. And I think that kind of leads into where I sit on the Global Sync as a whole and how I think the long-term impact that this program is going to have on Punishing Gray Raven will be a very, very notable net positive. I think getting the entire player base outside of China to a point down the road where Kuro comes out, announces a new character, you know, taking a new role in various teams, and everyone gets to feel the hype of knowing, oh man, as soon as this patch comes out in a month or 2 months, I get to try out, I get to have this character. I get to check out this character, update my teams, build something new, check out new gameplay, and do it at the same time as everyone else. There's no seeing the announcement and getting this little mini burst of hype and be like, oh man, that's so sick. I've been waiting for this character to get a new frame. And then the hype immediately dies because you know you've got an 8-9 month wait before you can even think about adding them to your account and getting to play with them. That, you know, alone is such a huge, huge thing for the game long term. I think it's going to really bolster the overall morale of the player base. It's going to make people more excited for each new patch to come out instead of, oh, hey, patch X is finally here. We finally get to update this team that has been outdated for X number of months or even a year or whatever, right? So I'm really excited for that point. Once we get to the point where I can turn on the next big announcement, program that Kuro builds up to reveal a new patch, a new story, a new character, that's going to be so cool to get to feel that with everyone else in the entire world who plays this game and go, hell yeah, it's time for new stuff. Let's go. In addition to that, I think once we get to that point and we're back on the normal patch schedule, everyone is caught up, we're all unified and all that stuff, I think playing the game at normal patch schedule speed is going to get all of us global sync players to feel like we got to take off the weighted training clothes. Can you imagine how empowering it's going to be when we get our first global patch? Like the first patch where everyone in the world is caught up, we all get it the exact same time, and you just get to go, wow, it's one patch. There's only one character. I only have to roll one character or build one character. I only have one patch worth of event to do. I only have one new chapter of the story to try and read through. It's going to feel like we all got out of the hyperbolic time chamber. We're just like, all right, refreshed, ready to go. Let's rock. I think that's going to be a minor, net positive when it's all said and done. But I do think that's going to be one of those things where it's like, oh man, I can breathe again. This is great. So I think that's going to be very huge. And all in all, the global sync has been daunting, and it is asking a lot from key contributors to this game and its community. But I think the net positives outweigh the negatives by a pretty notable margin. I think a lot of the global sync program's creation and whole reason for being, beyond the things that Kuro has already said, they want players to experience that hype of new characters being announced. They want characters to not have to try and dodge spoilers for the stories, for 8, 9, 10 plus months while they wait for that story to be translated and brought to, their server that they play on outside of China. Those are obviously key reasons for why this program got enacted in the first place. But I think a lot of the plan for the global sync actually revolves around the Devil May Cry collab. I don't know if this is true. I have no idea. This is not any insider info. This is not me leaking anything. This is just my personal kind of thought and idea of why the global sync came to be. Again, I think it's the reasons Kuro told us, but I also think the DMC collab is another key reason this whole thing is happening in the first place. The reason I think that is that, again, if you don't know, I have a very long-standing history in the fighting game community. I've been playing fighting games competitively for 22 years. I work on a contractual basis for EVO and Combo Breaker, which are the two biggest events in North America, EVO being the largest fighting game event in the world. And if there's one thing I know about Capcom from experiencing over 2 decades of doing that, it's that Capcom is very, very strict and stern when they allow their IPs to mingle with other IPs. They are very particular in how they allow people to do collaborations or utilize their characters and their IPs. And I have a suspicion that to get the DMC collab contract agreed to and to get that to be a real thing that we get to experience in Punishing Grey Raven probably came with a caveat that it has to be run exactly once and exactly a specific time agreed upon by Capcom and Kuro. Again, I have no proof of this. I do not know if this is true or not, but it is my suspicion that the DMC collab is actually a big reason for why the global sync is happening in the first place, because it's what they're going to have to do to make sure the entire world gets to experience the Devil May Cry collab. And that's important, obviously, because you would not want players to miss out on a collab ever, but especially not this one. Devil May Cry is a massive franchise. It is gigantic in terms of its reach, in terms of its just pop culture aspects. I mean, you may have never played Devil May Cry in your life, but I'm willing to bet if I say I am the storm that is approaching, you probably have a good idea what I'm talking about, right? So I don't think it's a big reach to say that DMC has just a little bit more reach and more broad knowledge and appeal than a game like PGR, which is still kind of niche even in its own genre, right? This collab is probably the biggest thing that could ever happen for this game so far. It's going to massively increase the visibility of Punishing Gray Raven. You're going to get a lot of people going, what is this game where I'm seeing Dante and Virgil doing these crazy combos, but it's not Devil May Cry. They're doing it alongside these characters I've never seen, fighting these robotic monstrosities I've never seen. It's going to be such a massive boost for this game if the DMC collab goes off and doesn't stumble. If this collab hits and does it right, this will be the biggest boost for PGR I think it could ever get across the entire world. And that's something we should all want. The more visibility, the more recognizable this IP becomes, the more people decide to go, oh, hey, Dante and Virgil are in this game. All right, I'll give it a look. Why not? That is huge. That's such a massive positive for this game. And I think no matter how you feel about the Global Sync program, if you're feeling burnt out, if you're feeling like it's a lot to try and keep up with, I think it's going to be worth it in the long run. I think it's going to be majorly worth it in the long run, just because that collab is so incredibly important. Obviously, we had the Black Rock Shooter collab. We had the Nier collab. Nier is a huge franchise, too. Yoko Taro is a genius. The man puts his characters in every game ever and reaps the rewards. And, I mean, salute. God bless. Absolutely brilliant plan. But Nier collabs and gacha games are like the sun rising tomorrow. It's just an inevitability for almost every gacha game that has ever existed. Devil May Cry, on the other hand, that's not in every gacha game. That is not a collab you see every day. In fact, you almost see it never. And the fact that Devil May Cry is getting a new anime on Netflix this year, we're getting a lot of inklings that maybe, a new Devil May Cry game is going to be announced at least sometime in the near future. This is a chance for Punishing Gray Raven to go from a niche gacha game to an extremely well-known gacha game with a much larger player base. And if that happens, that's only a net positive. We have more people playing the game. We have more people investing money into the game because they want to support it. We get a better product going forward. So, all in all, now that we kind of know how this global sync thing is going to work, now that we've experienced a couple patches of it and we kind of know what's being asked of us going forward, I thought it would be just a good exercise to sit and talk about that for a second and kind of give my thoughts on where we are, where we're going, and how it's gone so far. So, how about y'all? How are you feeling so far? Almost 2 full patches in the Global Sync program. What's been your positives and negatives from this experience so far? If you're a newer player who has just started because of the Global Sync program, has it convinced you to keep up? Has it convinced you that this game is worth your time and investment, maybe your money down the road if you decide you want to spend money on it? Or if you're going to be completely free to play, do you feel like this has been a good way to get you onboarded and into PGR and taking part in being part of the game? So I want to know what you all think. Tell me what you think the Global Sync program has been so far. If you are on board with what they're doing, if you think this is going to be a net positive long-term like I do, or, if your outlook is the opposite, I would love to know your thoughts and reasons on that, because I think it's important that feedback is constant for a live service game. I think that's the most important thing the community can do, is give consistent, critical feedback. Not rage baiting or not overly hyperbolic stuff, but actual honest to God feedback and throughput on what we think of how we are being treated as the customer, as the player base. We are the customer. We spend the money on this game. Even if you're free to play, we are the ones who make the game go. So I think everyone's input is very, very worthwhile and important. So let me know what you think. That's going to do it for this one. Again, we're kind of on the wind down portion of this patch, so I'll probably get a couple like war zones or something out before we finish up, but here soon it's time for the biggest patch this game has ever seen. 2 paid S ranks, 2 more chapters of the main story, a boatload of event modes, a boatload of updates to various game modes, quality of life, and all that. So don't worry, there's going to be probably more than I could ever hope to cover in the very near future, but I thought now would be a good time before it gets too hectic with this gigantic new patch that's 2 weeks away to talk about what's gone on so far, how it's going and where we might end up. So let me know your thoughts. As always, I appreciate all the feedback and support. If you want to do the YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, all that nonsense, feel free. But otherwise, I will see you in the next one. So until then, y'all take care, and I'll catch you later. Peace.